Hey guys, what's up? So this is a bit of a video that I've had in the works. We're going to be discussing the winners and the losers of the first DLC. So for those of you that don't know, there are a ton of Pokemon that are being added to the metagame today. This is going up on the 17th. I'm recording this late at night on the 16th. But yeah, so a whole slew of Pokemon come into it and are going to be added to the metagame. I actually made a video going through a tier list of all the Pokemon that are going to be added, fully evolved forms, and Chansey. And if you want to check that out, I definitely would recommend it. It's on my channel, my main page. And if not, you can just scroll through my videos. But I'll just go through the list really briefly again. So yeah, here is the list that you guys might be able to see here. Basically, these are all the fully evolved Pokemon that we're going to be getting. Just to go through it all, although I'm sure you'll see plenty about this on my channel, on other people like Joey's channel, and just on the simulator on Pokemon Showdown. If you're getting games over the next couple of days, you'll be seeing a lot more of Slowbro. It also gets Teleport, which is huge with their generator and why it's so good. Chansey, which is just generally a great Pokemon, but also it gets Teleport. Volcarona with heavy duty boots. Tangrowth for generator and always going to be good. Azumarill, it gets high horsepower as well. Magnezone, it loses hidden power, but it gains body press, and it's really good in this metagame potentially because of that, and the fact that it does well against Corviknight and Skarmory. Of course, it has to watch out for opposing body presses, though, but yeah, there's definitely some niche there. In terms of other viable OU Pokemon that we'll probably be seeing, Skarmory and Talonflame are two good options as well. Talonflame's going to need to run heavy-duty boots, and it still took a bit of a hit last generation, but yeah. And then there's also Scizor, Mienshao, Starmie, probably going to be OU viable. And same with potentially Crocodile. Blissey probably not so much because Chansey's just superior, but you know, maybe someone will use a stall team with both if you're wild like me. And then, of course, rain teams are also going to be viable. In fact, we're going to be covering that in the video, so yeah, Politoed and Kingdra are worth noting. And then Pokemon are listed in C, D, and F tiers. Probably more likely to be seen in other tiers. Poliwrath is something that a lot of people have told me that they think it might actually be viable in OU. It gets moves like Close Combat, Darkest Lariat, run a set with Belly Drum. So yeah, definitely something to patrol there. And Lycanroc, different forms that get different moves and have different stats, and that's definitely something to patrol as well. But yeah, just listing other Pokemon. Dragology, Zoroark, which is kind of a fun Pokemon, but not really super viable. Dredagon, which a lot of things going for it, but still more of a lower tier Pokemon presence. Exploud, Tauros, Kangaskhan, a trio of normal types from early generations. Exeggutor, general and favorite. And then the F tier Pokemon is some 3 electric types that are kind of never really gained traction competitively. Luxray being the best of them, probably something that'll be like PU viable alongside Golduck, Emolga, and Dedenne. But yeah, I don't see any of those Pokemon doing particularly well. But yeah, just to familiarize with the things we'll be getting, that's the list. But I want to get more to the winners and losers, so I'm going to pause and get right back to that now. Alright guys, we are back. So yeah, there are 10 things that I've picked out between Pokemon, like individual Pokemon like Gengar, Reuniclus, and then archetypes as you see here, like rain teams and stall teams. 4 of them, in my opinion, are clear winners. They're going to benefit from these changes in the metagame that already were in the metagame. So things like Gengar right now might be like a 6 out of 10 in the metagame, and it's going to suddenly become like a 7 or 8 out of 10 in my eyes. But then there are also some losers. Things like Zeraora, which right now is a top tier Pokemon, but it's going to suffer pretty heavily from these changes and these additions. Now, you notice that there are more losers than winners, and that's because the additions are more defensive, and we're kind of looking at reactionary presences. So a lot of times we're going to be seeing offensive threats like Zeraora or Kyurem or Primarina potentially suffering more and more, or the whole hyper-offensive archetype. But let me use this video to not only explain those interactions, explain why I feel that these Pokemon might see increases or decreases in viability. You're going to be using them on more teams or less teams, and kind of the reasons that those will be, and perhaps also go and give a little analysis on why those reasons, those Pokemon that are going to be countering or going to be enabling these Pokemon might be good in the metagame or might serve enough of a purpose to kind of define these other Pokemon. In a way, it's all like a bunch of intertwined chain reactions in the metagame. What's good, what's not good, it all is relative. It's defined by the context of the metagame. For example, Gengar is a phenomenal Pokemon in general, and it's OU in Gens 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But all of a sudden in Generation 6 and 7, it largely has fallen off. And that is mostly because the metagame just has stronger and better things. Despite Ghost type improving drastically, it really only saw brief stints of dominance in Generation 7 and even less in Generation 6. Generation 6, you really only seldom see it on like random Sticky Web teams nowadays, and even then it's not a staple. In Gen 7, I don't see Gengar at all. the fact of the matter is that metagames cannot be friendly to really good Pokemon just by coincidence, or the fact that they have just stacked more counters added to the game, or are better because of other things. And they're all related. Everything is related in some sense or another. So I'm just trying to piece this together for you guys. I also have our friends Wooper and Wooloo just as little segregators between the archetypes or the Pokemon and like what their reactionary forces are. But anyway, before we go on too much, as we are already approaching the over the 5-minute mark. Wow, let's get through the winners. So I indicated 4 winners in this change. I believe that there are going to be 4 Pokemon or archetypes that are going to improve through the release of DLC, at least initially, before the metagame kind of develops. So it's going to be shaken up at first a lot. And those are Gengar, Rain teams, Reuniclus, and Stall teams. So let's go through Gengar first, as that's the first one I've listed. I believe that Gengar is a great Pokemon right now. It's able to run a Nasty Plot plus Life Orb set, which is really good with Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb, neither Thunderbolt or Focus Blast. Focus Blast really only needed for things like Tyranitar and the rare Incineroar. However, now it's kind of enabled to do more things, not only with that set, but also, say, substitute variants, or other Nasty Plot variants, or even choice variants with Trick. The main reason is that Chansey, while it's a great special sponge, it can't actually do anything to Gengar. Given how low its special attack is, relative to things like Blissey or just other special balls, it tends to rely on Seismic Toss as a damaging move, and in general, that is more than sufficient. But against Gengar, needless to say, it can't actually do anything. Because of that, even if Gengar comes in on the Thunder Wave, which is the absolute worst case scenario, it's still going to outrun Chansey, and it can do what it likes, be it trick it a choice Specs or a choice Scarf, or alternatively set up a substitute or a Nasty Plot, and eventually win the 1v1. Now, of course, there are options for Chansey. For example, it could triple it with Thunder Wave and then switch out something that's faster that can maybe also check it. On the last generation, we saw people run Psywave to hit Ghost types a couple times, but it's really more of a meme than it is a reality, and I don't even know if that's a thing this generation, in all honesty. So yeah, in general, you shouldn't be expecting to do any damage with your Chansey to Gengar, and that's always an interaction that historically has favored Gengar, and despite Gengar seeing some of its worst overall viability in generations 5, 6, and 7 when Chansey rose to prominence, those are one of the few silver linings that it has going for it. However, the Chansey interaction is not the only thing that favors Gengar, in my opinion. There are also going to be a slew of walls added to the tier, such as Slowbro and Tangrowth, and to a lesser extent Skarmory, and all those Pokemon are not only susceptible to the special attacks that Gengar has to throw at it, but also, while they can't threaten it, Slowbro can kill it with Psyshock, and Tangrowth should be able to kill it, or at least heavily dent it with Knockoff. Gengar, if it's able to get in safely with something like, say, Teleport on Slowbro or Chansey or Clefable on your own team, which actually, in my opinion, also plays into its favor, is going to be able to get in, and it's going to be able to pose threats to opposing defensive cores, keep them on the back foot. And I just think that because Chansey, the main primary special wall being added to the metagame, can't do anything to it, I think that's just a gigantic boost for the viability of Gengar. I think that while something like Dragapult might suffer, not enough to where I'm going to list it as like a victim, because the physical sets actually are going to do very well against Chansey, as it also can't get hit by it. But the special sets, they're going to struggle. So yeah. With that said, sorry, I just need a sip of water there. But with that said, there are of course going to be some checks and counters to Gengar in the metagame, as it currently is. For example, you see things like Sucker Punch Cinderace, or just Cinderace in general if it's not Scarf. And also priority moves like Sucker Punch on Bisharp or Shadow Sneak on Aegislash can keep it in check offensively. However, defensively, while there are fewer and far between, Hydreigon lives any non-Focus Blast or Dazzling Gleam, neither of which are particularly common. In addition to that, Como-O can wall Shadow Balls and get super effective Earthquakes off. Mandibuzz lives anything that's not a +2 Thunderbolt. And the list goes on. Rotom Heats uses a soft check to it on some teams. And more importantly, Tyranitar is a great answer to it when it lacks Focus Blast, which is currently quite uncommon. We might also see an uptick in specially defensive Talk specs, as Slowbro will be the main physically defensive bulky water. And we could even see some Pokemon from lower tiers rise up into prominence and potentially keep it in check as well, such as Incineroar, which is currently already a pretty good option in my eyes. On top of that, I can't really think of much else to say about Gengar, but I definitely think that it will be a consistent Pokemon in the metagame. It might even surpass Dragapult temporarily, although I do think Dragapult's the better Pokemon regardless of this, but yeah, we're going to have to wait and see. But hopefully we're going to be able to see Gengar really use its capabilities to a more widespread extent, something that we've seen more in generations like 3 and 4, particularly 4 because 3 just Gengar plays totally different prior to this physical special split, of course, but it just has such a widespread arsenal. I mean, you could use moves like Dazzling Gleam to hit things like particular Dark types, Destiny Bond to trade. There's sub-disable or sub-pain split sets. It also gets other utility moves like Encore. Focus Blast, of course, would be a coverage move that we might see more. Of course, Hex sets are great. Knockoff for utility, maybe that's viable. I don't know. Could be cool for the Eviolite Chansey. Nia Nasty Plot, Pain Split, as we said. You name it. And I mean, there are just a whole slew of cool things you get. Of course, on top of the stab moves like Shadow Ball and Sludge Bomb / Sludge Wave. Electric moves, Inia Trick, Will-O-Wisp. Yeah, I mean, I think that there are going to be a lot of cool things that we're going to find Gengar using here. So, overall, I believe that Gengar is a winner in the DLC. Of course, this might not have sticking power, but in the initial days when everyone's trying out the new toys, I think Gengar is going to be a great Pokemon that was previously in the metagame that is going to not only retain viability, but likely see an uptick in initial viability. Switching gears, however, while Gengar is a great Pokemon, Rain teams are currently seen as kind of fringe viable. I'd say that they are decent, but not superb. And a large reason for that is that the metagame is currently pretty passive and stagnant, in the sense that we see a lot of Protect style Rain teams, you see a lot of natural checks encounters, 2 Pokemon you see in Rain teams, like Toxapex, Ferrothorn, and there are going to be more additions to that list, with things like Slowbro while physical attackers, Assault Vest, Amoonguss, or Tangrowth while special attackers, as well as Chansey, which should be able to tank a Rain boosted hit on the special side as well. However, there are some additions to Rain teams that, in my opinion, are able to surpass the additions on the bulkier end of the spectrum that make Rain teams ultimately benefit from this. As you see here, I have listed 3 Pokemon that are pretty common in Rain teams right now: Pelipper, Keldeo, and Ferrothorn. And honestly, Keldeo might not be staple status, but in my eyes, ever since Drakefish has gotten banned, Keldeo has just been amazing on Rain, in particular choice specs. And if you guys want to see more on that, I did upload a live bit under 2 weeks ago, or maybe around 2 weeks ago, with Spec Keldeo and Rain, and I definitely checked that out. But that aside, there are a couple Pokemon that Rain teams get. And before I get into the 2 big ones, I also want to say that, as I mentioned in the list before, Poliwrath with Swift Swim and Belly Drum, it has access to moves like Darkest Lariat and now Close Combat. And you can still use water moves, of course. So yeah, I definitely would advise trying that out on Rain teams as well. But it's probably more of a niche option, or maybe something for lower tiers on manual Rain, as I believe Drizzle is banned from UU. But that aside, 2 big Pokemon that OU teams gain that have historically seen a lot of success on Rain teams would be Azumarill, which was quite good on Rain in Generation 5, and also saw a stint with the Belly Drum set Z in Generation 7 Rain. In particular, I believe the Belly Drum set will be great on Rain teams here, and it could even run high horsepower, which it recently got, to hit things like Toxapex, and also at +6, it should be able to kill other things as well. So you don't need to run Liquidation or Knockoff. You could run Play Rough, Belly Drum, high horsepower, although I guess Knockoff's still like other options material at least, with Aqua Jet. And Aqua Jet in Rain at +6 is able to do a million to things like Hydreigon, and Dragapult, and opposing Keldeo, and so on and so forth, just most faster Pokemon that resist the Aqua Jet. And of course, it's going to kill everything that hits neutrally. There's nothing that's like a physically defensive behemoth that's going to be outrunning an Azumarill. So yeah. Given that, I think that it's kind of really like one of the cheesiest Pokemon in metagame, and I think a lot of people are going to try and exploit that. Personally, I'm probably going to be building a team and trying that in the ladder within the next week myself. And on top of that, Kingdra is also another great option. The OG Rain nuke, all the way dating back to Generation 3, honestly, but also Generation 4 is really took off as a Rain sweeper. And while it is limited in that lacking to a move, it's kind of hard to break through things like Toxapex and Chansey still. There are a lot of options it could do, and it's going to be amazing against opposing offensive teams. In particular, it's going to kind of invalidate Hyper Offense, as in if you face Hyper Offense with this, all you could do is just hit it with priority moves. It's going to be killing things left and right, which is why I'm going to say later on that Hyper Offense is a loser, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, Rain teams definitely are seeing an uptick in viability here. While there is going to be more competition for things like Ferrothorn, and Keldeo might not be great itself, I think these Rain teams in conjunction with the new Pokemon, maybe they'll take a different form, different shape than prior, but I definitely think they'll be viable, and I'm curious to see where the Rain archetype will go in the SSOU metagame. Alright, moving on from there, another winner in my eyes would happen to be Reuniclus. While this might seem a bit out of nowhere, as Reuniclus isn't a Pokemon that's been particularly trendy in the metagame, it is something that I've quite liked using. You might have seen I used it recently on a team with Surfetch and Alive. I definitely checked that out. I was able to beat a couple of really skilled players on the ladder that day. I actually got Amari P and Lax that day, ironically enough, but in terms of the post-DLC metagame, regardless of what it did prior to that, I actually think this metagame and the landscape, surrounding it all, and whatever buzzwords you want to say, surrounding the metagame, landscape, blah, 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 I could just ramble on for days and buzzword speak, but in terms of what it's going to do, the shit it's going to beat, a lot of the passive Pokemon just kind of fall flat to Magic Guard boosters, like Combined and Clefable, which I didn't want to include Clefable in this video just because there's a lot of things shifting its viability both up and down, so I wouldn't call it a clear-cut winner or loser, but Reuniclus is something that's a clear-cut winner in my eyes. while there are Pokemon like Chansey, Slowbro, Amoonguss, and Skarmory, which might actually bite some of its usage as their defensive behemoths that could potentially outclass Reuniclus on certain teams, specifically the Assault Vest set. Calm Mind Reuniclus, yeah, I'll throw Calm Mind in the moveset just to be more clear, is going to be a superb pick in this metagame in my eyes. Calm Mind with Magic Guard is able to set up on non-Steel Swap plus Toxic Chansey, which I don't think we're going to see, non-Wordy Seed Amoonguss, although, spoiler alert, if you're already getting Wordy Seed off and then you're like toxing it, then by that point you're probably going to die to boosted Psychics. So yeah, and normally it runs Thunder as its second attack, which is great against Slowbro and Skarmory, but regardless, neither of these Pokemon can really damage it. The best Skarmory can do is just phase it out. Slowbro can maybe Calm Mind with it and try and freeze it, but if it's Thunder or Shadow Ball or Signal Beam, then it's never winning that 1v1, barring very lucky Ice Beams. So yeah, all things considered, there are just a lot of sitting ducks for Reuniclus in this metagame, and I think that once the metagame establishes more of a balance as opposed to just new Toy City, so maybe like a week or two down the line, Reuniclus is actually going to be a superb option in the metagame. And while it isn't great against these hyper-offensive teams, again, I think those might drop, and I think teams that overwhelm it in general might not have the most longevity in the metagame, and therefore will fall out of favor, thus leaving Reuniclus to just sit on balance teams, set up, and win in the long haul. And I think this is just a great characteristic of any Magic Guard booster. Clefable you can include in that mix, of course. So yeah, I think that Magic Guard boosters in general are pretty big winners in this shift, and Reuniclus is the poster child of that movement. Or the poster fetus of that movement, I guess, because it kind of looks like a fetus. I'm going to stop making these jokes before I end up making an even bigger ass out of myself. But yeah, no, so Pokemon like Chansey, Skarmory, Slowbro, Amoonguss, even Tangrowth, although Tangrowth can at least do a little more damage off the bat than all these Pokemon, as it has Leaf Storm, Knockoff, Power Whip, etc. It's great against even things like Bulky Talonflame. They're going to be taking a lot from +1 Psychic or Psyshock, Thunder, which Bulky Talonflame might be used on some stall teams. One thing that was added to the metagame, which might help against it, would be Scizor. Although Scizor I don't think is going to be too great. However, recently we learned that it may very well be getting Psycho Cut, and Psycho Cut is something that will bolster its viability, particularly because it's going to let you hit Toxapex. However, you're now limited to now 3 move slots, and you probably, if you're running Psycho Cut, you got to be offensive to break Toxapex, so you're probably going to want like an offensive Swords Dance variant with that. So you're going to want Superpower for things like Skarmory, Corviknight, Chansey. So then you need Bullet Punch as well. So it's like Bullet Punch plus Psycho Cut plus Superpower, and actually that set can't really do super well against Reuniclus, ironically enough. It's going to be lacking Above Move, be lacking Knockoff, so yeah. I think Reuniclus is going to be pretty solid in this metagame, and it's probably something that's a bit underlooked or undervalued, so definitely try that out yourselves. And last but not least, stall teams, in my eyes, are kind of big winners in this as well. As you see, staples like Clefable and Quagsire, they probably aren't going to see drastic shifts in their viabilities. Quagsire is always going to be a fringe unaware user that's seldom used, but when it is used, it's used effectively on stall teams. And Clefable is still going to be one of the faces of the metagame, for better or worse. Could even be suspect at some point in time. Definitely keep your eyes open for that. I'm not closed-minded to that at all, but I don't think it's going to happen in the next couple days. So we got to ride it out a little bit just to see what it is, because so many things are impacting it. For example, some things it's going to do really well against because it can absorb their status. It can sit on them and it can pass wishes. Other things like Talonflame, Scizor, Volcarona could potentially threaten it, and that could be great. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how Clefable is reacted to in this metagame, but that aside, it's pretty common on just all your teams that we do kind of see on the ladder sometimes. And in my eyes, gaining things like Chansey, Skarmory, Amoonguss, even Tangrowth and Slowbro, which I didn't quite have the space to list here because I needed my little Wooper in the middle, of course. We got father and son here, in case you're curious. But yeah, no. So given that, in my opinion, stall teams are just seeing drastic improvements right now. Stall is fairly viable. And I think this will at least make it put it on the map of consistency, like somewhere. It's not going to be the most consistent archetype, especially when compared to balance, but it's going to be usable. Chansey just does that. Skarmory helps with that a lot. So yeah, definitely keep your eyes open for that and some creative, different type of stall applications in the metagame. Personally, I'll be dabbling in that myself at some point as well, I'm sure, because, that's who I am. But anyway, so those are the big winners. Gengar, Rain teams, stall teams, and Reuniclus. This is not in any particular order, just what came to me beforehand. But yeah. So, if you guys are at this point and you're still watching the video, A, thank you guys so much, but B, let me know in the comments what you think of these winners, and on top of that, let me know any other Pokemon that are not included in the DLC edition, so Pokemon that were previously in the metagame, or at least in the game, that you believe improve in viability, not only in OU, but also in their respective metagame, so U, R, U, N, U, etc. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say, and I'll definitely try and respond in the comments when possible. Now, let's get to the losers, because unfortunately, there are losers. In fact, in my eyes, there are more losers than winners, just because when you add Pokemon metagame, they take up a certain amount of viability, a certain amount of space in the metagame, and that actually is going to infringe upon the viability of some Pokemon currently in the metagame. So as you see, I only have 4 winners, but I have a whopping 6 losers to give us 10 total, so a 60-40 split, which is interesting. But before we go and overanalyze all of the little ramifications of that and the whole trickle-down kind of effect and viability that certain things might have, let's go into the more direct cause and effect relationships of the losers and why they might be losing some viability because of Pokemon that are introduced. The first one that came kind of as a glaring, obvious one to me would be Zeraora. Zeraora is a great Pokemon right now, and honestly, I think it's still going to be good until DLC2 when Garchomp and Landorus T and Gliscor, at least 2 out of 3 probably come out. And then losing Hidden Power Ice and not having Ice Punch and Sarstall is going to make it a lot worse. But until then, I still think it's going to be a viable option. However, there are 2 Pokemon in particular that are going to do very well against it. And perhaps give you the first full-on counters to it. Because even a Hippowdon could die to Grass Knots, physically defensive Clefable could die to, say, Bulk Up variants. Rotom Heat can only stomach so much. Physically defensive Ferrothorn can lose to Calm Mind variants or Bulk Up variants or Life Orb variants, etc. A lot of things can soft check it, pivot around it, and that's why it's been kept in balance beforehand. But now we finally have things that work as counters, and those would be the bulky grasses in Tangrowth and Amoonguss. Physically defensive Tangrowth is a full stop to the physical sets. However, special sets can break through it. The thing is that Assault Vest Tangrowth still checks Zeraora's physical sets, as a +1 close combat is not able to KO it, and you can do a lot of damage with Giga Drain or even Leaf Storm. Earthquake's going to be doing a lot to you even if you're +1, get knocked off, and so on and so forth. So yeah, either variant of Tangrowth, the 2 big ones, Assault Vest and Rocky Helmet physical defensive, both do quite well against it. And combined Zeraora, I can't see it gaining that much usage here, seeing as it's going to be dealing with the next Pokemon, Amoonguss, as well as Chansey, which is now coming in tier. But I don't really list Chansey here, as it's going to struggle against physical variants that can run Bulk Up, Knock Off, Close Combat, etc. So I don't view Chansey as an answer to non-combined variants as Zeraora, just to be clear. However, I view Amoonguss as a universal check to it. There's nothing you can really do to break through it besides maybe Fire Punch, which I believe it gets. But the thing is that even that's probably not going to kill most Amoonguss. It could sleep it, it could use Foul Play, Stomping Tantrum, you name it. You could even run a Rocky Helmet if it breaks Knockoff, or Assault Vest if it's special set. So yeah, Amoonguss is just an all-around wall to Zeraora. And finally, having 2 dedicated counters to it that not only have built-in longevity with Regenerator, but also have an arsenal of things to potentially cripple it or break it down offensively, is a nightmare for Zeraora. I think it's going to go down from being an S- or an A+ tier Pokemon to probably something more in the lower A ranks. It's definitely a big loser here, and that's unfortunate for people who love the Plasma Fister. The Plasma Fister is not a nickname. Holy crap, I'm never saying that again. Please forgive me, guys. That was just the first thing that came to my head. No, let's call it the Electric Dog. Yeah, people that love the Electric Dog. Alright, yeah, we're going with that. Wow, this is first take. This video is not my best work. I'm sure you guys will enjoy anyway. A lot of constructive content here, so let's focus on that and not the bad nicknames. Anyway, next up we have Corviknight. Corviknight naturally is still going to be a good Pokemon and definitely more than viable. It's going to be a mainstay in the metagame for the entirety of the metagame. However, Magnezone being added to the tier gives it something that can trap it. While you can probably EV to live a non-Specs Thunderbolt with a special defensive variant with ease, maybe even a Specs one if you run max special defense, Body Press is not going to be able to kill it in one hit. You got to time it right, and even then it's going to leave you very low. And it could potentially even live 2 Body Press if it runs some bulk, or even a Body Press set of its own where Thunderbolt still 2 kills you always. And given that, I think Magnezone is a great answer to Corviknight. You can U-turn out as it comes in, or even run Shed Shell, but the former implies that you're constantly just U-turning out, so you can't really be used to reliably check anything, because you're just in and out, in and out, in and out, which can give you momentum for a little bit, but eventually it's going to catch up on you. You're going to be taking damage, you're going to want to roost, whereas the ladder of Shed Shell is susceptible to knockoff, and even then, losing Leftovers / Rocky Helmet means that checking things, it's a lot harder. In addition to Magnezone, however, there is one Pokemon in particular that is just a great defensive, kind of competitor to Corviknight, and that is a timeless Pokemon, Skarmory. Well, yes, it did see a drop in viability last generation. In generations 3, 4, 5, and 6, it was considered a great OU Pokemon. In last generation, it still stayed OU by usage, seeing usage on some stall teams and some more bulkier, fatter, balanced teams as well. But yeah, Skarmory is a pretty timeless Pokemon. It's very similar to Corviknight in some ways, as in same typing, physically defensive oriented by nature, but can run especially defensive in a pinch. The difference is that Corviknight gets pressure, Corviknight gets U-turn, and Corviknight, I believe, has just kind of more of like an adaptability feel to it. Although the way it plays with body press, we haven't actually seen Skarmory with body press in past generations, so that might be why. But yeah, Corviknight's definitely more of a pivot, and it has pressure, which is really good in longer games. However, Skarmory has spikes, which can also force progress in longer games, in conjunction with Toxic, which can cripple the right switch-ins, such as, say, Rotom Heat or Zeraora. But also, it has more natural physical bulk, and it also gets access to body press this generation as well, which is going to be a big help to it. So yeah, it's going to see its usage split. It's definitely still going to be an OU Pokemon, but it might not be top tier. It might go from like being an S- Pokemon to, let's say, like an A or an A- Pokemon, and I think Skarmory will be in a similar vicinity to it. In addition to Skarmory, there are also some other Pokemon like fire types, such as Volcarona, and even offensive Talonflame, that are going to do really well against Corviknight, especially if they're not switching into Brave Bird. And last but not least, the uptick in Cinderace's viability recently due to Libero being released also helps that. That's not a DLC thing, that's just a recent events thing. But yeah, I figured I'd leave that as a note as well. So Corviknight's definitely another one of the bigger losers in the metagame. However, that is not it. We happen to have 3 other losers. Oh, actually, it's only 5, not 6. My bad. I feel like I'm forgetting something, honestly, but it slips in my mind, so my bad about that, guys. Yeah, the next team's just a balance team, so I didn't lift anything out. Alright, so the next Pokemon in my eyes as a loser is Kyurem, and it's for a very simple reason. In fact, I'll say it in one word. Chansey. Is that cleared up for you guys? I guess I'll elaborate a little bit more just in case. So previously, Ice Beam and Freeze Dry in the metagame were really spammable. Even if you're doing it into a Clefable or a resisted hit, you're almost definitely going to be killing either the resisted Pokemon like, say, Rotom Heat or Aegislash, as they tend to run non-specially defensive sets, and you have a chance to freeze any of them, not barring fire type. Yeah. Sorry, lost my breath for a second. Gotta take a sip of water. But on top of that, even if you're going to Clefable, not only does Modest have a good chance into a KO, but also you're going through Wish PP pretty quickly, and on top of that, you're leaving it lower because eventually you can, like, say, Ice Beam. Let's say it's turn 1. You lead Kyurem, and they lead something that dies to Ice Beam or Freeze Dry, like Toxapex or Hippowdon. They have to go to their Clefable in fear of that. You go for the Ice Beam, you do 47%, which is like a mid-roll. They wish. You leaving them at 10%. If you didn't quit or freeze either of them, if you did one of the other, then you just win the game. So it's like, already you threw those 2 Ice Beams, that's like north of a 20% chance probably. Now, all of a sudden, it is down at 10, 15%, whatever. And then it protects because it knows it's going to die to the next Ice Beam, but you switch out to your Jirachi, your Aegislash, your Conkeldurr, your Terrakion, whatever it may be to take advantage of it. Now, it's forced out. Maybe it gets another turn of Protect and leftovers, leaving it at like 65, 70%. But then it's forced out at like no healthier than 3/4 health. And then next time, Ice Beam's going to 2 KO. And provoking those sequences in the long haul is just great if you're able to kind of be on top of your Kyurem that much. And that's why Kyurem is so good right now. But all of a sudden, that spam ability drops drastically because Ice Beam and Freeze Dry aren't doing shit to Chansey. They're not even a 4-hit KO, I believe. Draco Meteor would probably do like 35-ish, maybe not even, maybe like 33-ish. I'm not going to run the calcs, but unless you like get running crits against Chansey, you're not going to be doing much with that either. So having a hard wall is really bad. And in addition to that, like the cheesy Dragon Dance set, which really is not viable in the post-secure metagame, meets a couple more problems in Slowbro. Can run body press for it, Volcarona, etc. So yeah, sorry about that, but Kyurem's viability is kind of drastically shafted in my eyes, just due to one Pokemon in particular, but also just in general. So that's really unfortunate, as it was a really promising Pokemon in the metagame, but I still think it'll be viable. It's just gotta run something that like lures / abuses Chansey. Knocking off Chansey could be really big, because then Ice Beams are doing north of a third, and I mean, just one freeze is all it takes, and it's into a KO range. So yeah, we kind of play similarly to the Versatile Fable variant before, but it'll just do a little bit less on average, but it's against something like Chansey, which takes Stealth Rock damage at least, so that's cool. Alright. Beyond that, there's one Pokemon and one archetype that I also believe are losers in the metagame, unfortunately. The first one will be Primarina, and predominantly it's because it's going to be facing a new set of walls on the special end of the spectrum that can keep it in check, but another part of that is that it faces competition with another Pokemon that shares the same Water Fairy typing. Let's start with the walls, as they're more direct checks and counters to it. Chansey is a big one, as seeing as Primarina's HP is below 100, it's going to need to now run like Calm Mind plus Rest to beat it. And even then, you do a lot of damage with Seismic, especially after a knockoff. And if you force a rest, and you can switch out something, and it's going to not run a Sleep Talk, going to attack. So yeah, Come on Rest Primarina might actually be okay right now, but it's still something you can really take advantage of in the metagame with things like Zeraora, things like offensive grass types such as Rillaboom. Oh, Rillaboom was another loser. Hold the phone. Let me just add another one here. Oh, sorry. Rillaboom. Hulu. Skarmory. Sorry, I don't know. I can't talk. Amoonguss, Tangrowth, and do you want to do Volcarona? Let's do Volcarona, sure. You could actually, I don't know if it does. It learn Stone Edge? Rock. It doesn't actually get any rock buffs. Okay, well we'll cover this next. Anyway, sorry, I probably should have paused for this, but I figured you guys could like see the process and go through as well. Yeah, that's the last loser. So yeah, we'll put it before the last archetype. But yeah, so Primarina is the loser here. In my eyes, yeah, Chansey just hampers it a ton. And on top of that, the grass types. Assault Vest, Tangrowth, Rocky Helmet is dead, dying the Moonblast from Specs and dying the +1 from Combined as well. But yeah, Amoonguss, it kind of forces it to run Psychic to beat it, as Clear Smog is great against it. And you can run Seed Bomb. It actually used to run Seed Bomb in Suicune metagames like Oras from time to time, especially if your name was ABR to break subs like that. Could do that, but also just Sludge Bomb is going to break the sub +1 anyway since that's super effective. So yeah, Amoonguss isn't amazing against it, but Chansey is amazing against it. And on top of that, Tangrowth with Assault Vest should do really well against it. And in addition to that, it's facing competition from another Water Fairy type in Azumarill, which is probably a bit more effective than it in terms of being a win condition given these Pokemon and the fact that Blighter and Azumarill beats all three of them, just as an example. But on top of that, there's also things like Slowbro, which is kind of hard to fit Slowbro plus Primarina on a team. So, yeah, I definitely think Primarina is going to, unfortunately, see a drop in usage. That's a shame, because Primarina's rise in popularity over things like Keldeo, in my eyes, is one of the coolest parts of our metagame right now. And although it was hard to build with, because you already don't want to run Double Fairy with like Clefable, for example, there were teams with both of them that worked, or just teams with Primarina without Wish Fable that worked. And I thought it was one of the better, if not best, win conditions in the metagame, and saw drastic improvement over the last few months, and people kind of started to acknowledge that, and that was just really cool in my eyes. Even saw usage in Smog on Tour Playoffs and SPL, and so on and so forth. But yeah, now it's probably going to definitely see a decreased usage. I don't know if it'll go UU. I think it's definitely a possibility, but regardless, it will not be close to like the A ranks in OU anymore, unfortunately. All right, the next one is Rillaboom, which we just discussed briefly because I came up with it on the spot because I had it before, but I forgot to make a set out of it. But yeah, Rillaboom recently saw an uptick in viability thanks to Grassy Surge. It's all over the ladder if you've been watching my OU lives. If not, then check them out. I have a playlist for all of them. I've done 40 parts on my road to top 10 now, and there's so much good content there. I do a lot of creative stuff, so definitely check that out, including a video with Grassy Surge Rillaboom from about 2 weeks ago. But that aside, Pokemon like Skarmory, which maybe they lose to Swords Dance or Bulk Up sets 1v1, but they could Whirl it out, or they could Iron Defense Bulk Up, or they could Brave Bird it or Toxic, so there's a lot of tools, but Amoonguss is just a hard counter to it in my eyes. Same with physically defensive Rocky Helmet, Tangrowth with like Sludge Bomb or Poison Jab, you name it. Does it get Mega Horn? Mega Horn. No, it does not get Mega Horn. What does get Mega Horn though? I'm kind of curious. Terrakion gets Mega Horn. Alright, so Terrakion might be a little winner, not a big one, because still, got rely on Mega Horn, and then you lose Earthquake for ages lost. You can't hit everything, basically. But yeah, that's cool for Terrakion, anyway. And Cobalion and UU, I guess, if any of these trickle down. But yeah, no, Amoonguss does well against it, Tangrowth does well against it, and it has no rock move to Volcarona, so while Volcarona might take 1,000,000 from a Choice Banded Woodhammer, it's still 4 times resistance, so that's 1,000,000 divided by 4. So it's still like not a 2 kill, probably. And high horsepower is probably the best bet you can have against it, and high horsepower is not going to be enough to kill it in one hit, whereas Volcarona, either stab is going to just decimate Rillaboom. In particular, Bug Buzz is really well against Substitute variants because how moves go through Substitute. So if you're running like Sub Swords Dance or Sub Leech Seed, you're like, oh, haha, I can now like trap this Volcarona in the Vortex for a couple turns. And nope, as you Leech Seed, you're dying to Bug Buzz. And it's going to be quicker, so you're not even getting like, But anyway, so Rillaboom is definitely a big loser. It already wasn't a great metagame pick. It was just a cool Pokemon that was added to the game, but now it's seeing an even bigger hit in viability. Last but not least here, we have Hyper Offense taking a hit. We're at the 34-minute mark, so let's try and get this wrapped up before 40 minutes. I don't want to ramble on forever. Because this is going to be going with the morning right after the DLC is released. So yeah, I'm actually waking up early for that, and it's already 1 a.m., so definitely got to get going here, as I got to write a World Cup article as well. Check that out, by the way, when it comes out for World Cup. But that aside, Hyper Offense is an archetype that in my eyes is going to be seeing a drastic hit. I couldn't fit all the Pokemon that it uses, like signatures of Hyper Offense, like Lead Drill, Lead Mew, Scream Snarl, Lead Trackdown, and Lead Shuckle. These are all examples of Pokemon that would be used on it, but with a surplus of walls, especially walls like in phase or like hard walls like that are like super bulky on one side of the spectrum, for example, Chansey's going to wall a lot of non-durable special setup sleepers, which pretty much all the special setup sleepers on like Hyper Offense are those. Combine, Zeraora. Yeah, that's a great example. Nasty Plot Dragon. I can actually run Focus Blast for it. I guess that's cool. Kyurem and Primarina, you see seldom on those, and Nasty Plot Rotom Heat. But yeah, more importantly, the physical attackers is much more important. And those are going to struggle with things like Slowbro, especially Body Press Slowbro. Physically defensive Tangrowth. Amoonguss can get a Sleep Off if it's not facing Veil, which is a Pokemon I couldn't quite fit in here because it's just not prominent enough to be used over one of these in my eyes. Veil kind of sucks, especially with weather, seeing more and more usage. But on top of that, it's also going to struggle with Skarmory. Yeah, and then also things like Talonflame's Priority, Scissor's Bullet Punch. Yeah, I just think that Hyper Offense is going to see a pretty drastic downtick in viability, and the more cheesy, like offensive kind of alternative playstyle, if you will, for those type of players would be Rain. So yeah, I also went through all the losers, as you can see here, and just heard. Wow, I don't know why I just said that. You guys just listening to that. Whoopsie. But yeah, let me know what you think of these losers. Do you think that I'm accurate, or do you think that some of them might still be just as good as before? And in addition to that, what other losers are there in not only SSU, but also in the metagames you'll follow, those respective metagames as well? So yeah, we went through the winners, Gengar, Rain teams, Reuniclus, and Stall teams, and the losers, Zeraora, Corviknight, Kyurem, Primarina, a late cameo from Rillaboom, and the hyper offensive archetype. Let me know what you think about all of these, and if you enjoyed this content, then be sure to like the video. If you enjoy all of my content, or you like this content and you want to see more, not only subscribe, but also give some of my other videos if you. I do OU lives, I do some metagame analysis, I do draft league, I tournament games from various tiers all over my games and other people's games, and on top of that, be sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section. Alright guys, have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed the release of DLC. Personally, I'm very hyped, and I'm definitely going to be bringing you more videos like these and other videos covering DLC in the future, so stay tuned for that. Have a great day. Peace, guys.